Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again to take, well, mountains of research and boil it down for you, give you that efficient summary you need to really stay on top of things. And today, we are diving deep into a molecule that's genuinely starting to reshape things in metabolic health and, long-term weight management. We're talking about Cagrilintide.
Cagrilintide.
Yeah. If you've been keeping an eye on hormonal science breakthroughs, a lot of focus stays on maybe one main path. But Cagrilintide is interesting because it sort of brings in this powerful, maybe overlooked partner to the whole conversation.
It really does, and that's why this deep dive feels so timely. The work on Cagrilintide, it's exciting. It really signals a shift, I think.
How so?
Well, we're moving beyond just hitting one target, right? We're actually tapping into a complementary pathway, one that's been frankly underused historically.
No.
It's about getting true hormonal teamwork to tackle, the real physiological reasons behind appetite getting out of whack.
Okay, hormonal teamwork. I like that.
Yeah.
So our mission today, just to be clear for everyone listening, we're not just going to skim the surface. We want to really unpack the mechanism. How does this thing actually work down at the cellular level? We'll look at the clinical findings, which are pretty surprising, both for Cagrilintide alone and especially when it's combined with other things. And then think about its role going forward. In personalized medicine, we're going to cover the sources thoroughly, give you the full picture.
Exactly. And just to set the scope from the start, everything we discussed today, it's grounded purely in the current research sources available.
Right. Okay, let's start at the beginning then. The core mechanism. How does it work? So the first thing people always ask, what is Cagrilintide? Is it like some brand new synthetic thing, or is it based on something our bodies already do?
Oh, it's definitely rooted in our biology. Cagrilintide is what we call a long-acting analog, basically a modified version of a natural hormone. That hormone is called amylin. Now, amylin is kind of one of the unsung heroes in your metabolism. It's made by the same cells in your pancreas, the beta cells, that make insulin, and it gets released right alongside insulin right after you eat.
Interesting. So what's its job?
Think of it as your body's built-in fullness sensor. Its main job is to signal satiety, that feeling of being satisfied and full, straight to your brain. It basically says, okay, enough nutrients are coming in, time to stop eating now.
Right, that natural I've eaten enough signal.
Yeah.
So if we all make this, why do we need Cagrilintide? What's the problem it's solving?
Yeah, that's the key question. The problem is stability. Natural amylin is, fragile. It breaks down really, really quickly in the body.
Quickly.
We're talking minutes. So it sends a strong signal, yes, but then poof, it's gone almost instantly. And in people maybe struggling with metabolic issues, that signal might be weak to start with, and then it just vanishes too fast to really keep appetite in check long term.
Okay, so it's too fleeting.
Exactly. So Cagrilintide's innovation, its clever molecular engineering, they took the basic amylin structure and tweaked it. Often, they add something like a fatty acid chain, kind of similar to how they stabilize semaglutide, actually.
Ah, right.
And this change dramatically extends its half-life from just minutes to about 7 to 10 days.
Wow. Okay, that's a massive difference. Minutes versus a whole week.
It's night and day.
So that's the difference between like a quick whisper of you're full and a steady week-long announcement.
You got it.
And that huge leap in half-life, that's what makes this once-weekly injection possible, right?
Yeah.
Which must be way easier than older options.
Absolutely. It fundamentally changes the game for adherence.
Yeah.
And that sustained signal lets the mechanism really work its magic. Because it's not just one simple action, it's a complex dual action mechanism. That's really key for you to understand. It's not just flipping one switch.
Dual action. Okay, let's break that down. What are the two main things it's doing? Where does it act first, maybe centrally, in the brain?
Okay, so the first big action is central satiety signaling. Cagrilintide targets amylin receptors, and these are located in really specific parts of the brainstem that control appetite. We're talking about the area postrema and the dorsal vagal complex. These are like the command centers getting signals from your gut.
Okay.
So by continuously activating these receptors, Cagrilintide basically turns up the volume on your brain's natural I'm satisfied response. It reinforces that feeling of fullness, and it actively dials down how hungry you feel, subjectively. You're biologically nudged to feel full sooner and stay full longer.
So that's the brain side of things, the central break. What's the second part, the peripheral action?
The second action is slower gastric emptying. So cagrilintide physically slows down how quickly your stomach empties its contents into the small intestine.
How does it do that?
It affects the muscle contractions of the stomach wall. It just slows the whole process down. And this has a couple of immediate effects. First, your stomach stays physically fuller for longer, which sends mechanical signals of fullness upwards. Second, because the food hangs around in the stomach longer, the release of satiety hormones from your upper gut is also prolonged, so you get sustained signaling from there too.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. The brain is getting a stronger full signal, and the stomach is physically staying full longer and sending its own still full signals for longer too.
Exactly. Two strong, synchronized signals working together. Brain says satisfied, gut says satisfied.
Oh, I have to jump in here because this seems really important. The studies always mention participants just eating less without trying so hard, without feeling like they're white-knuckling it. If the drug is working by slowing things down physically and boosting the brain signal, does that mean it kind of takes willpower out of the equation? Or at least reduces the reliance on it?
It absolutely shifts the burden. This is what I meant earlier about chemistry versus willpower. It's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
When you rely only on willpower to eat less, you're essentially fighting your own deep-seated biology. That leads to decision fatigue, stress, and often, you bounce back.
Right, the classic diet cycle.
Exactly. Cagrilintide, on the other hand, it's restoring the natural physiological breaks. People in the studies didn't report that same mental struggle, that feeling of deprivation.
Right.
Why? Because the actual drive, the feeling of hunger is biologically dampened. They're just responding to a stronger, clearer signal of fullness that their body is sending.
So it's like fixing the signal instead of just ignoring it.
Precisely. It's treating the underlying physiology, not just trying to override the behavior through sheer force of will.
That chemistry, not willpower idea. That's huge for anyone who's been on that dieting roller coaster. Okay, let's quickly touch on the other benefits. What about metabolism, blood sugar, that kind of thing? Does slowing digestion help there too?
It does, indirectly. Because cagrilintide makes digestion more paced, nutrients get absorbed more gradually, too.
Ah, okay.
So instead of a big, sudden rush of glucose hitting your bloodstream after a meal, it enters more slowly, more gently. And the result, much smoother blood sugar curves after eating. You avoid those sharp peaks and the nasty crashes that often follow.
Which probably helps with energy levels.
Oh,
and cravings.
absolutely. More stable energy throughout the day, less of that 3 p.m. slump. And, crucially, it helps minimize those powerful, hormonally driven cravings you get when your blood sugar tanks. So yeah, it supports overall metabolic balance, even beyond just the weight loss itself.
Okay, now we need to place cagrilintide in the context of what's already out there. Because whenever a new player like this emerges, people immediately compare it to the big ones. Specifically, the GLP-1 agonists, semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy.
Right. The comparison is essential.
Since semaglutide also affects appetite and slows the stomach down, you might think, okay, is cagrilintide just doing the same thing with a different label?
And that's a really fair question, but the answer is a definite no. The research is clear on this. The mechanisms are complementary, not redundant.
Complementary, okay. How?
Think of them as hitting two different hormonal systems, two separate brakes on appetite, if you like.
Okay, break number one, break number two.
Sort of. So cagrilintide is purely an amylin analog. Its main jobs are that central satiety signaling via amylin receptors and slowing down gastric emptying. That's its focus. It gives you that calm, steady feeling of fullness. Importantly, it doesn't directly mess with insulin or glucagon release in the way GLP-1 drugs do.
Right, and semaglutide, the GLP-1 analog.
Semaglutide does suppress appetite and slow the gut, yes, but fundamentally it's mimicking an incretin hormone. That means it directly acts on the pancreas. It boosts insulin secretion, but only when glucose is high, and it suppresses glucagon release. So it's deeply involved in blood sugar regulation in addition to appetite.
Got it. So semaglutide is doing double-duty glucose control and appetite. Cagrilintide is more specialized on the satiety and digestion timing aspect.
Exactly. Semaglutide is managing blood sugar and appetite. Cagrilintide is really amplifying that fullness signal and optimizing how fast you digest.
Which means using them together.
Yeah.
You're hitting the problem from two angles.
Precisely. It's hormonal teamwork, like having, one system managing the engine's power, GLP-1, and another system, amylin cagrilintide, controlling the fuel gauge very accurately. Together, you get much better control than either one alone.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned amylin analogs. Cagrilintide isn't the first one, is it? there was Pramlintide.
That's right. Pramlintide was kind of the first generation. It proved the concept. It showed that targeting the amylin pathway actually worked for improving glucose control and had some effect on weight.
Oh, but. There's always a but.
The but was practicality, a huge practicality issue. Pramlintide has a very short half-life, measured in hours, much like natural amylin.
Okay. So what did that mean for patients?
It meant they had to inject it before every single meal, sometimes 3, maybe even 5 times a day, depending on their eating pattern.
Wow. Before every meal. That sounds incredibly burdensome.
It was a massive barrier to adherence, especially for long-term weight management. Imagine trying to stick to that schedule day in, day out.
Yeah, no kidding. So Cagrilintide is the upgrade in that sense.
Absolutely. Cagrilintide is the next-gen amylin. Thanks to that molecular modification we talked about, extending the half-life to 7 to 10 days, it means you get a steady therapeutic level of the drug with just one injection once a week.
That difference in convenience is just enormous. It makes long-term use actually feasible.
Exactly. And consistency is everything when you're talking about sustained weight loss and metabolic benefits.
Okay, so it's a big step up from Pramlintide. Now, looking at the absolute cutting edge, we hear about these incredibly potent drugs, the multi-receptor agonists, like tirzepatide, hitting GIP and GLP-1, or retatrutide, the triple agonist. Those things seem really powerful.
They are undeniably potent, yes, achieving remarkable results.
So here's a question then. If those triple agonists are potentially even more powerful, why bother with Cagrilintide? Why not just focus on making those multi-agonists better, even if they have, say, more side effects initially?
That's a really critical strategic point. While those multi-receptor agonists are impressive, they come with challenges. Designing one single molecule to hit 2 or 3 different targets perfectly is complex. It can sometimes lead to stronger initial side effects as the body adjusts to multiple signals at once. And from a regulatory standpoint, proving the safety and efficacy across all those hormonal pathways with just one compound can be a longer road.
Okay, I see. Complexity has downsides.
Right. Cagrilintide offers a different approach. Modularity. Think of it as a high-performance component you can add on.
Modularity, like building blocks.
Exactly. We already have GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide that are well understood, with tons of data and regulatory history. So instead of creating a whole new, complex, triple-acting molecule from scratch, you can simply combine the well-known GLP-1 with this new, potent amylin analog, cagrilintide.
And get the benefit of hitting 2 pathways without the complexity of a single triple-acting drug.
Precisely. You achieve that dual brake effect, potentially, with better personalization options for dosing, maybe faster regulatory pathways for the combination therapy. And, importantly, it offers an option for people who might tolerate the 2 separate mechanisms better than one superpowered triple mechanism hitting them all at once. It's a smart, strategic approach in drug development.
Okay, that strategic advantage makes sense. Let's translate it into results. We need to look at the clinical trial data. What did the sources show when Cagrilintide was used just by itself, monotherapy?
Even on its own, the results were pretty impressive for a single pathway peptide. In the clinical trials, weekly Cagrilintide monotherapy led to average weight loss of around 10% of a person's starting body weight.
10%. And over what time frame was that typically?
That was generally seen over about 6 months of treatment, which, is significantly better than what we used to see with older non-peptide weight loss medications, maybe double.
Double the old standard.
Okay, and was it just weight loss, or were there other health improvements at that 10% level? Because we keep saying it's about overall metabolic health.
Definitely more than just the scale. This sources confirm clear improvements in other key areas. Participants saw reductions in waist circumference, which is important for visceral fat. They also had significant lowering of blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic, and positive changes in their cholesterol profiles, lower triglycerides, higher HDL, the good cholesterol.
So even alone, it's driving real systemic health benefits, mostly through that sustained appetite control.
That seems to be the main driver, yes.
And practically speaking, how was it given? Dosing.
It's a subcutaneous injection, so under the skin once a week. The trials tested various doses going from like 0.3 milligrams up to 4.5 milligrams weekly. But the dose that often emerged as a good balance for effective weight control while being well tolerated was 2.4 milligrams per week. That seemed to be a common working dose in the weight management studies. 2.4 milligram weekly. Got it. And I remember you mentioning titration starting low and going slow. That's important here too.
Absolutely crucial. You can't just jump to the target dose. Gradual dose titration is standard practice with these kinds of peptides.
Why exactly?
You start with a low dose and increase it slowly, usually over several weeks, sometimes longer. This gives your digestive system time to adapt to that slower gastric emptying. It's specifically designed to minimize those initial GI side effects, like nausea, as your body gets used to the new rhythm.
Okay, makes sense. Allow the body to adjust. Now, the really exciting part, the combination. Let's talk about Cagrilintide. That's the fixed combo, right?
Yeah.
Cagrilintide plus semaglutide. What happens when you hit both brakes, the amylin brake and the GLP-1 brake at the same time?
This is where we see a really profound synergistic effect. It's not just additive. It seems like they boost each other.
Synergy.
You're getting the powerful glucose-regulating effects and appetite suppression from semaglutide, plus the strong, sustained satiety signal and the gastric slowing from cagrilintide. You're essentially tackling the core drivers of weight gain and metabolic dysfunction from two distinct, powerful angles simultaneously.
And the results. the headline numbers from the longer-term studies, like over 16 months, they were pretty jaw-dropping, weren't they?
They really were. They basically set a new benchmark for what's possible with non-surgical weight loss. Average weight loss in those combination studies reached 20% of starting body weight, and in some groups, even a bit more.
20%. Okay, let's pause there. 20% average weight loss.
Yeah.
Put that into context for us. Before these new agents, what was considered a win for weight loss drugs?
Oh, historically. Getting even 5% to 10% sustained weight loss with medication was considered a huge success, a really good outcome.
Right.
Achieving a sustained 20% weight loss that was territory previously only reachable through bariatric surgery, like a gastric bypass.
So we're talking surgery-level results.
Achieved through biology. Through restoring these natural hormone signals. That's the significance of that 20% figure. It completely changes the potential outcome, the therapeutic goal.
Wow. And beyond the weight loss number itself, what about other metabolic factors in the combo studies?
The benefits were amplified there too. The combination therapy showed even broader improvements, especially in people at high risk. So individuals with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes saw really significant drops in their A1C levels, major improvements in their lipid profiles, reducing cardiovascular risk factors, and even reductions in markers of inflammation that are linked to obesity.
So it's not just making people smaller, it's making them metabolically healthier across the board.
Exactly. It's delivering comprehensive cardiometabolic protection alongside the weight loss.
Okay, the results are undeniably impressive. 20% is huge. But for any treatment people might take long-term, how well they tolerate it is absolutely key.
We need to talk about the side effects, honestly. What did the sources say? What are the most common issues people experienced? Yeah, transparency here is vital. Nothing is side effect free. As you might expect with drugs that work on the gut, the most common side effects are generally mild to moderate gastrointestinal symptoms.
Like what specifically?
Things like nausea, maybe a feeling of being full very quickly, early satiety, some abdominal discomfort, and occasionally changes in bowel habits like constipation or diarrhea.
And why do those happen? Is it the drug itself being toxic, or is it related to how it works?
It's almost entirely related to the mechanism of action. Remember, cagrilintide is intentionally slowing down how fast your stomach empties.
Right, applying the brakes.
Exactly. So your body is registering that sustained fullness. If you try to eat the same volume you used to, or if your system just isn't accustomed to that slower pace yet, it can translate into feeling nauseous or overly full.
So it's more like the drug doing its job and your body needing time to catch up.
That's a good way to put it. It's the digestive system adapting to the new, slower rhythm, and consequently, people adapting to eating smaller amounts because they feel full sooner. And this is exactly why that slow dose titration we talked about is so important.
Right, starting low, going slow.
By increasing the dose gradually over weeks, you give the body that chance to adjust. The key finding is that these GI symptoms usually peak early in the treatment and then tend to subside significantly for most people as they adapt. This makes the long-term tolerability much better than, say, older drugs that might have had persistent side effects.
Okay, that's reassuring. What about other risks?
Right.
Anything more serious? Hypoglycemia, low blood sugar.
Because amylin analogs like cagrilintide don't directly stimulate insulin secretion on their own, the risk of hypoglycemia is minimal when used alone or with drugs like metformin or GLP-1s. The risk only really increases if it's combined with medications that do actively lower blood sugar by stimulating insulin, like sulfonylureas, or if someone is on high doses of insulin already, then doses might need adjustment.
Gotcha. And I think I saw something about gallstones.
Yes, that's sometimes mentioned. It's important to clarify, though. Rapid, significant weight loss itself, from any cause, diet, surgery, medication, can slightly increase the risk of gallstone formation. It seems to be related to changes in bile composition during rapid fat mobilization, not a direct effect of the peptide itself. So it's more linked to the success of the weight loss.
Okay, so overall, the picture seems to be expect some initial GI adjustment, manage it with slow titration, serious risks are minimal for most people, and the side effects tend to fade.
That summarizes the general profile reported in the sources pretty well. A manageable adjustment phase for most.
All right, let's zoom out again, thinking big picture now. Where does Cagrilintide fit into the future of treating obesity? You mentioned a paradigm shift earlier.
I think we are absolutely witnessing one. And it starts with how we even talk about obesity. The sources reinforce this. We have to move past the outdated idea that it's just about calories in, calories out, or a lack of willpower.
Right, it's biological.
It's a complex, chronic hormonal disorder. There's biological dysregulation happening. And Cagrilintide's strategic role is bringing another major validated mechanism, the Amylin pathway, into our toolkit. It perfectly complements the GLP-1 and GIP pathways that other drugs target. So now we have ways to potentially optimize 3 key hormonal systems involved in metabolism and appetite.
So the vision is more tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
More personalized treatment.
Exactly. The vision is that peptides like Cagrilintide, especially in combination, could become cornerstones of long-term personalized weight management therapy. It's about moving towards a physiology-based approach. We're not just trying to force starvation, we're trying to fix the broken signaling pathways, allowing the body to find its way back to a healthier metabolic state more naturally.
So thinking about the person listening to this, who are the specific groups that stand to benefit most if or when this kind of therapy becomes more widely available based on the research?
Looking at the data and the mechanism, you can see a few key groups emerging. First, definitely individuals who really struggle with persistent, powerful hunger, that feeling of never being truly full despite trying to control intake. Cagrilintide directly targets that satiety deficit.
Okay, the constantly hungry group. Who else?
Second, people who are already on GLP-1 therapy, maybe for type 2 diabetes or for weight management, but they've perhaps hit a plateau, or they need that extra boost in appetite control to reach their health goals. The combination approach seems ideal for them.
Adding Cagrilintide to enhance the GLP-1 effect.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And third, certainly people with prediabetes or established type 2 diabetes who need significant weight reduction and would also benefit from the improved post-meal glucose control that comes from slowed gastric emptying and the GLP-1 component in the combination. It offers a really holistic metabolic intervention for that group. Hashtag outro.
This has been incredibly thorough, really digging into the science behind Cagrilintide. If we had to boil this whole deep dive down to one single takeaway message for our listener, what would it be?
I think the core message is this. Cagrilintide essentially helps your body remember what feeling properly full is like. It works by restoring and amplifying that natural conversation between your gut and your brain. The satiety signals that might have become weakened or ignored due to metabolic changes over time. It fundamentally shifts the challenge away from a constant battle of willpower towards letting your biology work for you again.
Restoring the conversation. I like that. And achieving those potentially life-changing results, that 10% or 20% weight loss, with the sheer convenience of a once-a-week shot. That's what makes it sustainable, right?
Yeah.
Makes success actually possible long-term.
That convenience factor cannot be overstated. It's what bridges the gap between groundbreaking science in a lab and effective medicine in the real world.
Okay, so that brings us to our final thought, something provocative for our listeners to chew on. Based on all this data, especially the combination results, what's the biggest implication you see?
The most profound implication, I think, is that achieving an average of 20% weight loss non-surgically, it represents a biological feat that, until recently, we only saw with major operations like bariatric surgery. The fact that we can now potentially achieve this level of metabolic reversal by restoring the body's own natural hormonal signaling, it fundamentally changes the outlook for treating severe obesity. It suggests we might be moving towards therapies that don't just manage symptoms, but can actually target and reverse the core pathophysiology of metabolic disease using precision pharmacology. It feels like the beginning of something truly transformative.
A potential biological solution matching surgical outcomes. That is definitely something to think about.
Now, before we wrap up, it is absolutely crucial we add the necessary context here, based directly on our sources.
Right, important disclaimers.
Yes. Cagrilintide, and by extension, Cagricima, as we've discussed them today, are currently investigational compounds. This means they are only available within the structured environment of clinical trials. Their potential future approval by regulatory agencies, the final recommended dosing, and the specific conditions they might be approved to treat all of that depends entirely on the final results of ongoing and future large-scale studies and the review by bodies like the FDA and EMA.
So not available for prescription yet, still in testing.
Correct. And equally important is the mandatory research disclaimer. The compounds described in this deep dive are discussed for informational and scientific purposes only. They are not intended for human consumption or self-administration outside of approved clinical trials. We have to be crystal clear. These are research agents strictly confined to the research setting at this time.
Understood. A vital clarification for everyone listening. Thank you for making that so clear, and thank you for such a detailed and really insightful breakdown of this complex science today.
It was my pleasure. It's exciting science to discuss.
It really is. And thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into Cagrilintide and the dual brakes on appetite. We hope you feel informed and maybe even a little excited about where metabolic science is heading. Until next time, stay curious.